We arrive at our Wyoming cabin and find that we have no good fresh meat to eat while we're here, and we have some company coming, so we need to go out and try to get some good fresh meat. So I'll get together with a friend, and he got an antelope for us. So at least we'll have something good to eat. Then our company arrived, and we go out to the Red Desert. First thing we see is this famous landmark, the boar's tusk. Then we go on. Wally and Greta are our company, and Greta wanted to see some wild horses. So we went out to the Red Desert, and wild horses we did see. There's a real big, pretty stallion that very proudly is watching over his little harem of mares, and they don't seem very wild at all. So Greta can get up and get her picture taken with this big stallion in the background. She pauses a moment to look at an anthill made of gravel. The ants have carried that gravel up and made their anthill of it. And then the big stallion comes in as close as he dare get and does quite a little bit of snorting and a lot of looking with the majestic boar's tooth right in the background. This was a very important landmark for wagon trains and early pioneers coming through here. They knew exactly where they were when they could see this unique landform called the boar's tusk. There's even some flowing fresh water here, so the early pioneers could have watered their livestock right here around the boar's tusk. The old stallion was getting a little nervous, so we decided to go. Looks like Marge is catching a little bit of sleep as we head for White Mountain Petroglyphs site. This site is a very old site. It's thought to be over 5,000 years old, and it has some of the absolute most excellent petroglyphs that you've ever seen, scratched deeply into the sandstone. We walk up the short trail for a short distance, and then we start seeing this display. It's a panel that must be about 150 or 200 yards long with just almost solid petroglyphs on it. Every kind of petroglyph you could think of. And this looks like it may be a mountain lion with a baby inside it. And a humanoid. This is the way they depicted a woman in this area. And Marge goes in the little cave to look it over and get some pictures. This little cave has petroglyphs all through it. Wally goes in and admires the petroglyphs. They've even had fires in here because there's some smoke on the ceiling, some creosote from their fires. And you can go right in one door and out the other of this cave. I expect when the wind blew they would shut it off, but there's some excellent petroglyphs in there. The main thing there were a lot of pictures of women that they'd carved into the sandstone in this cave. As we walk along the wall, we see lots and lots of petroglyphs all the way along, and pretty soon we come to a site where it's thought these were Spanish soldiers on horses. And so the Indians maybe weren't used to seeing horses at that time, and they drew pictures of the soldiers on horses right in the cave, and they show spears pointing at them. So maybe, just maybe, they weren't too happy with them being there. And there's a whole lot of pictures of something that looks like chicken feet on the wall. And I'm not sure what that was. Maybe it was just pictures of the sage grouse feet. And then we see another big animal that's got many toes. And so we think this possibly could be a mountain lion. I'd say a bear, but he's got too long a tail. Then they've even illustrated some of their teepees and camps on the rock with more female petroglyphs. And then the American bison with the tally marks on it. These tally marks were they'd rub their hands over it saying a hunting prayer. And each time they'd come to a mark, they'd say a different verse. Then we come to this very special panel with all sorts of handprints on it. And these are all the right hand, and they're just a little smaller than my hand. Margie and Greta's hand fit them perfectly. And all sorts of tracks on the rock. And then an incredible sight. We think this is a woolly mammoth. You can see his tusks, his trunk, all four legs, and a big ear sitting back there with some tally marks on it. And even the eyeball is carved deeply into the sandstone. And then above it are some grizzly bear tracks. And we can tell they're grizzly bear because it looks like the claws are straight on it. And then another big spear. Maybe they were going to have mammoth for dinner that night. And it looks like another more crude mammoth petroglyph and another American bison on the rock. Probably the bison were the big thing they were hunting for right out in this area. This is a very incredible sight, both because there's so much of it, and another is because of the things that are shown in it. And then we see a juniper doing its best, struggling to grow out of one of the rocks above the petroglyph. And I think it's nature's bonsai. It's grown kind of distorted and small. Marge is looking at all the handprints, and also she's looking at all the footprints. There are even bear footprints and human handprints, even a little baby handprint, an Indian baby handprint it looks like. So we'll move along this area, and the zigzag lines right in line with Marge's head, that's their symbol of water. That's pretty much the universal symbol of water. And there's a human footprint in the sandstone that's been carved deeply into the sandstone. And I think we figured it was like a child's footprint that was on there. And then the handprints some of them are carved into the stone about 4 inches deep. And Marge and Greta's hand both fit perfectly in them. So we think they were made when women came here. This was a birthing area, and they would scratch into the sandstone to alleviate the pain of labor. And then more teepees and more other symbol of women. There is definitely a man, a hunter, a brave hunter. We even found a cave where you can go in and get out of the wind. It was pretty nice in there. And also on a hot day you can get in there and it's nice and cool. Marge is going on in, and they've even looked like they've even carved out a little bench in there to sit or lay on. So Marge and Greta are taking advantage of that and cooling off a little bit from that hot Wyoming sun. After they get cooled off a little bit in the cave, Wally will take a few pictures, and then we'll take to the vehicle and go to our next destination, which is the Tri-States Monument out here in the Red Desert. We arrive there, and there's a few little rail fences here and all sorts of little monuments. There's some of them that are it's the Montana, the Idaho, and the Louisiana Territory came together here, and there are signs that tell about it. We read the signs and enjoyed this little bit of precious history that's depicted on the signs, and then it's time for us to move on again, and this time we're going out and look at some real old history, like fossil history. From here on, we drive just a few miles and we find the fossil hills. We just come down off the top of the hill and get going on the little 2-track dirt road, and we'll come to it very shortly. But first we're going to have a little lunch. Looks like Wally's hungry. Next we come to the spot where we're going to look at some of the things the Great Basin deposited here so many thousand years ago. And there it is, the snail shells. The whole rock is nothing but solid snail shells. And these rocks are only 2 or 3 inches thick and just loaded with them, but they're in layers, layer after layer of these fossils. Shell fossils are here, and you can pick out snails and clams and all sorts of other sea life that was deposited here by the Great Basin. There's some excellent turbine snails. So Wally's looking them over pretty good there, and we just see just tons of them here. The whole hill, the top of the hill is covered with them, and they're sliding down the bank of the hill. All fossil snails from thousands of years ago. There's one that's even broke open. There's even some that are loose down in the softer stuff down below the layers of sandstone. It's sort of a mud stone, but the sun's getting low in the sky and we have to be going. We don't want to be out here too much after dark because it's quite a little ways back to the cabin. The sun's setting right in front of us as we negotiate the rough roads back to the cabin. The next morning at the cabin, we see this old buck that's been out here for years, and one of his horns is kind of distorted, and he's got a limp, but he sure thinks he's a dandy antelope, and so his name is Old Gimpy. And we see him where he's raking the sagebrush with the side of his cheek. They have a scent gland on the side of their cheek where they can deposit scent on the sagebrush. But now we've got to cut up our antelope meat, and we'll figure out something else to do later. It takes us a bigger share of one day to cut up this one buck antelope that we had hanging to cool for a few days, and then it's time to go on another adventure. So we jump in the vehicle and head out to see what we can find. we decide to go up in the Grovont mountain range to a place where there's a waterfall, and they call this Granite Creek. And also there's a hot springs there. And I can't say that that sounds like a bad idea at all. Some of the quake and aspen are showing their best of their fall colors in the reflection of a beaver pond. But we reached Granite Creek Falls, and now we're going to go down and see if we can get across the river. Marge is wearing her trusty pair of rubber boots. She doesn't want to get wet crossing the river, and the hot springs is on the other side of Granite Creek. So she's going to wade in and head over there. She's got her swimsuit and everything she needs right in that bag. And so she'll head across swift little Granite Creek with slick rocks in the bottom of it and see if she can get over there and try that hot springs just to see how it is. We only had one or two pair of rubber boots, so we had to take turns wearing them to cross here, unless you just wanted a wade across. She got across to the hot springs, and wow, what a neat hot springs, where you see that little stream of water crashing down over the rocks. That's the hot water. And the big waterfall is Granite Creek. And so that's cold water coming down there. But where Marge is where the hot water comes. And volunteers have dug some neat little ponds here where you can get in and soak. So we'll take turns getting across that river, and we'll all get in there and enjoy this wonderful, nice water under the roar of Granite Creek Falls. I guess that's kind of like a dream come true. A nice hot bath right next to a really nice waterfall. And there are lots of dippers and other water birds running around here. And so when we get enough of the hot water, we can go over and get in the cold of Granite Creek and cool off a little bit. But it just feels really good. There goes a little dipper on his journey, hopping from rock to rock and dipping his tail in the water. I guess it keeps his tail nice and cool. In the fall, when we were building our cabin, we'd come up this hot spring about every evening after a long day's work and soak in there, and that really helped keep us clean, and it made the aches go away from lifting those logs and working on the cabin. That little ouzel is sure busy here, hopping around in this water. And they'll do this even in the winter where the ice isn't froze solid. They'll be in this water. They walk on the ice, and then they jump in and grab their little water bugs or whatever it is they're after. And they don't seem to mind that cold water at Granite Creek one little bit. Matter of fact, I think they enjoy it. And he's sure a high energy bird. He just keeps dipping. I guess that's how they get their name, the dipper or an ouzel. Well, after we get done with the hot springs, it's time for us to head back to the cabin. We're going to stop at a beaver pond and look at a huge beaver house in Granite Creek. Then it's back to the cabin, and it looks like at this time we have a clothesline still standing, although it doesn't stand long. The wind blows it down daily. And I have a friend that helps put it up, and he asks about it once in a while. I said, well, it's down again now. And Marge isn't happy about that. She has to rewash her clothes again, she thinks, after they bit the dust from the clothesline collapsing. The sunsets and sunrises are just totally incredible. This is the Wind River Mountains, and the Gros Ventres and the Wyoming Range are all visible from the cabin. And wow, what neat sunsets and sunrises we have at the cabin. That makes it all worthwhile, I guess. Marge is unhappy again. That darn Wyoming wind has blown her clothesline down again. And so she's gathering up the clothes and we'll have to rewash them again. So the only thing we can do is try to prop it up, and it's cold enough our hands are freezing, and you need a good heavy coat on. That cold old Wyoming wind is whipping across there. But boy, when we get it up, they dry in a hurry. That wind just whips all the moisture out of them. And besides, this time of year, there's only like 15% humidity in the air around, so they dry in next to no time. So a clothesline sure sounds like a good idea if we could just get it to stand up, which it doesn't seem to want to do. So we'll crank up the old wringer wash machine, run them through the wash machine and the wringer again, and then try hanging them up again. This is kind of yesteryear's technology, but it works and works darn well. Wash machine is yesteryear's technology and is probably at least 70 years old, but it sure does a nice job. And if we can keep that clothesline up, those clothes are going to be really smelling good and dressed really nice and clean. Those wringer washing machines, I think they're getting a bad rap now, but they're a lot better than you might think. It looks like our clothes are going to get dry this time, and I'll do a couple repairs on the porch to the cabin, and we're going to load up and head back for home.